Okay, last one, and you can.
Bitcoin and digital currency. And if I don't ask you a question that you want to go over, since I missed that other article, but I think I probably covered it, just let me know, and then you can just start answering the question. I'll write a question later for it.
You got it.
Okay. Oh wait, I'm sorry, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. Okay, so there's a lot going on in the world about Bitcoin and digital currency. Can we start off by going over how the IRS views Bitcoin and other digital currency?
Sure. So Bitcoin is the most well-known name, but there are others out there. And with any of these so-called digital or cryptocurrency issues, the IRS announced back in 2014 that it was all going to be treated as property, not as currency. And there was some controversy about that when the IRS announced it, but that's the rule, that's what they've said, and for tax purposes it is property. So that's sort of the fundamental rule, is that you're transferring property when you are paying someone, quote unquote paying them in Bitcoin or other cryptocurrency, and that means the recipient of the currency, the Bitcoin, is getting property worth whatever it's worth on receipt. That's generally the rule. What's the fair market value when you get it? That's what you report on your taxes. So I don't think that's controversial. Much more difficult is what happens to someone who is paying in Bitcoin. And the answer to that is they are transferring property, which they probably have their own tax basis in. And so they may have gain or loss when they're paying someone in Bitcoin. I think that's the sort of crux of the issue here.
Oh, and how is the IRS addressing that then, or have they not really?
Not really, I guess, is the answer. Starting in this one release in 2014, the IRS has said it's property. And so, and the IRS says a little more. That means that you treat it as property, and as I just said, you have a gain or loss when you make a transfer. So a lot of people have been kind of making up the rules as they go themselves, but some of the consequences I think are clear, meaning you have gain or loss. Because it's property and you're paying someone, you still may be subject to 1099 rules, the reporting forms that we know about when we pay someone, if you're in business. So I think in general, I've just told you in a couple of sentences sort of what all the rules mean, and then it turns to, from a compliance perspective, what's happening, and that is a whole nother sort of can of worms to address.
Sure. And then you mentioned in a Forbes article about loans. So this isn't even about compliance, but just loans in virtual currency. Do the same tax rules apply here?
Boy, it's a difficult topic to address, and there are differences of opinion. And truthfully, I don't know the answer. I can tell you what I think, which is that a loan of cryptocurrency is probably likely to be viewed by the IRS in at least some circumstances as a loan of property. After all, they say cryptocurrency is property. And so the debate is what happens if, we know what happens if you borrow or loan money. You borrow money or loan money and it's no income to either side. Sort of the only income would be on interest or something of that sort. But with cryptocurrency, because it's property, most people, I think, assume that the cryptocurrency is fungible and that you're going to use the Bitcoin for something in your business or your personal life, and then you're going to pay it back with other Bitcoin or maybe even with other cryptocurrency. And so the question is, what does that mean to the borrower and the lender? I think a lot of people are doing these types of transactions, a loan of Bitcoin, for example, and assuming that it's like money, and because it is in some ways money, and so it's treated like a regular loan would be if it was in US dollars. That would be a good treatment if that turns out to be right, but I think it's dangerous. And so what I suggest is that people at least think about the issue and the risk that it might be viewed as a property transaction with gain and loss to possibly to both sides. And try to guard against that by sort of how they describe the transaction in their loan documents.
Okay. It's a lot of complicated stuff. So, as the tax law authority, do you have any best tax advice for investors of Bitcoin and other cryptocurrency?
I guess the best advice would be take a look at your exposure and what you are doing, if anything, on your tax return. I think the writing on the wall is very clear that the IRS knows or says it knows that many people are not reporting these transactions. In some cases, large dollar amounts. In some cases, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars. And some of that, I think, has been because people didn't know what to do. I think now most people know that the IRS expects to see this reported somehow, and the IRS is issuing summonses. The IRS is using tracking software. And so I think the days of cryptocurrency being totally anonymous and something that you didn't have to think about taxes when you transacted in cryptocurrency, I think those days are over, or at least they are coming to an end. So I think there's some dangers for people if they are simply not thinking about taxes.
Okay, is there anything else I missed that you would like to add?
I think I'm good.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, and then we'll do the staring thing again. Okay, that should be good.